Welcome, adventurers, to another enchanting episode of Lore Drop. I'm Dungeon Master Eguile.
And I'm D&D Wife, your guides to the hidden depths of the world of Extrayus.
Tonight, we unravel the secrets that lie beneath the surface of our homebrew campaign. We'll dive into the lore, the legends, and the magic that makes Extrayus so captivating.
We'll explore the stories behind the realms, the characters, and the world building that brings our adventures to life.
Whether you're a dungeon master seeking inspiration, a writer crafting your own fantasy worlds, or just a fan of immersive storytelling,
there's something here for you. Join us as we reveal the mysteries of Extrayus and share our creative journey with you.
Get ready for a new lore drop, where imagination meets creation. Let's embark on this magical adventure together.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Lore Drop. I'm your host, D&D Wife.
And I'm DM Eguile. So before we get started, we at least hopefully everyone's enjoying the new layout, new setup for all of our podcasts here.
Yep. This is going to be the first episode in the sort of new series as we go along. So I'm super excited for it.
So hopefully everyone likes those new intro outros. We put a lot of work in them.
So today we're diving into the captivating and mysterious world of Fey magic in Extrayus. So it's going to be super fun to explore.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be looking at the origins, the interactions with the world and the creatures of Extrayus, and just kind of what it represents, how we envisioned Fey magic.
Yeah, and the interesting part and the part to note is that this is something that you work on for the world building of our world.
This is one I was in charge of, just because it is more of like the whimsical sort of imagination type magic, very illusion based. So that seems more up my alley. And you got to take charge of the demonic side,
because we felt like that was kind of like that compliment that could kind of show us a little bit in the world building. Because who doesn't put a little bit of themselves in the worlds that they build?
Exactly. So we're going to start off with how we created Fey magic to begin with, how that came to be.
So, I mean, it's kind of tough because, I mean, really, it's like there is kind of no fantasy world without, like, the Fae.
Yeah.
In whether you want to call it folklore, old wives' tale, the Fae, the Fae Wild, any kind of place.
Yeah,
there's kind
everywhere.
of always the magical, whimsical land. The only thing we found, though, is it's kind of tough because since there are so many interpretations, there's so many people that believe like there's one right way to do the thing.
Everybody's got their own way that's perfect.
So when we were looking at it, and I remember being like, okay, I was talking to you, and I was like, well, look, we had this clean slate, but it was like, okay, you can destroy planets, you can destroy universes, but you can't really destroy thought.
Yeah,
and to me, that
tough.
was always kind of the principle of Fey magic. So when I was like, all right, go out and make this, and it was just like, all right, this magic is centered around the power of imagination.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you ran
Pure
with
thought.
to kind of get it started.
And it's the opposite of the demon magic, which runs on its own thing. But the focus for Fey magic is that boundless, pure imagination of the mind. So really, it's boundless, it's limitless, and that can cause some issues sometimes, especially within the bounds of Extrayus.
Yeah, and I think that really kind of also plays into like a lot of our backgrounds too. You're very much into kind of like folklore stories and tales yourself, and I think that was what really kind of helped build a little bit more kind of consistency into the Feywild.
Yeah, I like to read up on a lot of like prehistorical sort of myths, legends, things that have popped up. I love following all of those. So it really informed the way that Fey magic was built for our world. You got to have your court systems and all that stuff for the Fae, but it really informed the way that the magic acts in the world of Extrayus.
Yeah, and so obviously you're creating the lore and kind of the deepness, and when we finally actually do the deep dive on the Fae themselves, which I'm really looking forward to. But really, it was kind of the way mechanically that I was kind of writing on the side for the campaign is that I really wanted also Fey magic to be this very unique aspect. So it very much felt like this foreign, out of place kind of element to the world.
Yeah.
Whereas like demon magic, anger, rage, violence, totally. But like the Mad Hatter kind of stuff, that was always something that was like, terrifying. No matter how much you tried to understand it,
you can't.
You only got more confused.
Yeah, it isn't meant to be understood because it's the mindset to know set parameters.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where when we were like, okay, like how do we want to make this work mechanically in the world? And so it was like, okay, well, it's chaotic, but not in the sense of just like pure chaos. Yeah. It's not like, oh, but it's chaotic with a sense of purpose. And to me, that's sometimes more fearful than just straight roll the dice, see what happens. This is roll the dice, but I'm intentionally trying to push it in a more fun way, depending on your, predilection.
Yeah, it's weird when the motivation for a magic is fun.
Yeah, and it is one of those things where the magic, like the whole like mainstay of its essence really is affected by the user's personality type, versus, so we really, mechanically that I really wanted this very unique magic, but also this magic that really seemed unattainable.
Yeah.
Because I feel, in a lot of, especially what we're used to, 5e content, the Feywild is always this kind of like, oh, it's got the most powerful things, and it's got all these things, and it's, we always got to go there and visit. It's like, I want this to be something where, like, my players, if they're ever in a position where it's like you have to go to the Feywild, they are going to like want me to reschedule and change, because
we need more time.
They do not. This is not some whimsical land they want to see and make believe. They know that this is a horror show.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want it to necessarily be so inviting, and I think that kind of.
Yeah. Well, it does have its whimsy, but the whimsy is deceptive. It's meant to be the sort of lure into the real world of the Fey, and I liked that because. It was a culmination of previous consequences from different campaigns, and so the Fey magic that we have now has been changed to adapt from what it was before, with us following 5e and all that.
Yeah, and I love also how, talking mechanically, we also wanted to still make sure that even though it's this like technical foreign force, it's still integrated in part of Extrayus's core as well.
Yeah, because it was made a part of that. We'll find that a little bit later.
Yeah, because mechanically, I'm always worried, like when starting a magic, it's like how down the road can your players say eventually like remove it, right? So if you create this kind of plan where it does feel so foreign, it could eventually be a storyline where they want to get rid of that foreign thing.
Yeah.
And if you never really planned for that to happen,
that could be tough.
So that's why when we were talking, I was like, look, this is a fundamental part of our world.
Yeah, that's why it's part of the magical array.
Right. And so when you were like, okay, noted, and that's what really gave you that kind of impact to make more importance to how powerful this magic really is.
Yeah, the goal is probably not really to kick out the Fey magic, but to learn to work around it.
Right. I mean, and as we've had in previous lore drops and the story of the elves, we did learn, of a group of people that tried, and it kind of went.
They tried to wield it to some pretty disastrous effects.
So, being that you're, the creator, what are some of the basic characteristics that you can kind of pinpoint for Fey magic specifically, like at its core?
Oh, it's tough because Fey magic is whimsy embodied. It's a chaos that is, like you said, it's on the fun side of chaos, but it can turn bad if you don't control it. And so it's like trying to harness a dream or trying to catch a thought in midair. How do you do that? Yeah,
I always kind of looked at it. It's like lucid dreaming while you're awake.
Yeah,
and so it's kind of that. Or I guess a good way to put it is like you're in like a old-fashioned horror movie, like a suspense one, where it's like you never know what could be around the corner, but you kind of still know you're always in trouble.
Yeah, there's always this sense of wrongness.
Like it's a teddy bear, but your gut just tells you, like, I know this thing's gonna probably eat me.
Like it looks all right, but I'm getting the vibe. Oof.
I guess you really, like we always put it, it's like that cutesy gore where it's like, oh, it's pretty, but then it's the last thing you ever see.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Fey magic is. It appears, for those who can see it, who can see the magic manifested in visual aspects, it appears as these really beautiful prismatic bubbles. They're gorgeous. And it really invites whoever can see them to just be like, oh, you want to touch it?
Yeah.
You want to touch it?
And I think it kind of also shows in that nature of it too, because as I was creating kind of the prismatic puzzle, look out a little bit of me.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's that sense of it kind of shows that they are a little bit of like this like spread, in a sense that how they interact with the other world's magics, right? So Fae isn't necessarily trying to just straight take over.
Not really.
It changes, it corrupts. And so it's like magical essence represents that. Like as these bubbles come out of the cracks of magic, they kind of pop onto plants. And then those plants change a little bit as more bubbles
it spreads,
pop. So instead of it just being
like
this
pollen
like,
or spores.
Instead of what most people assume is like, oh, I shoot an energy beam of influence at you and that's what affects you. It's this whimsical, like you never know where the bubbles may go. May change.
Just let the wind carry you.
And I think that really helped sell your push of like, yo, this is something you don't want to walk into. You never know where it can be. You like with this kind of thing, you could be flying in the air and run into a hit of bubbles and suddenly grow a third arm.
Right. And that's where I think either the Fae magic is more, it's more like that deceptive whimsy where you think you're going to get something great out of it. And then you realize, oh no, I thought I was going to, get some amazing power, but really I'm getting, it's more like an infection. I treat it like.
Yeah, I think the best way to really look at this is, so, this is like a little bit for our session zeros. We had an option for essentially what was 2 negative things. For each character, which was a demonic curse or a Fae gift. And I think that really sums up where that was a negative thing. You didn't want that.
Nope.
But it was referred to as a gift.
Yeah.
And I think that really does help kind of solidify that essence of what you've created.
Well, yeah, because the Fae, and this affects the way they cast their magic too, the Fae don't really see in terms of good or bad necessarily. To them, it's just, oh, well, what's fun? What's exciting?
Yeah, I think like narratively when I, had some of these characters, it was a lot of like, they live for so long. It's more about just seeing new things.
Yeah, it's about killing the boredom.
It's like, so to me, it's kind of a little bit like Hellraiser, the Cenobites.
Yeah, we've seen everything.
But instead of like pleasures of the flesh, they want to like see the most beautiful, evilest flower.
Yeah.
The flower that can eat, towns.
Or the person who can answer the most riddles.
Right, so it's that kind of crazy, unique fear that gets created by them. And I think that's really cool. And it goes to show too, because as it interacts with the array, it's become such a vital point, but it's still kind of that invader in terms of what it looks like, because it only rests with, it rests in this kind of like 4-sided battle that's kind of always rotating as a square around our core, because these are the 4 forces, or one of the 4 forces that are just constantly trying to take control of Extrayus itself.
And they are 2 external forces and 2 internal forces, all of them vying for ultimate control.
Right, and so that to me that's so strange to that like a magic would have that kind of intent that it is trying literally to become the only magic of a realm.
Yeah, I feel like it's more like a mindless thought process. Just be the best, be the first.
Yeah, and I think another cool aspect that you kind of made on it is that it doesn't necessarily like nullify stuff. It only just changes things. It never creates anything out of nothing. Like it's not capable of just making things.
And even the Fae magic in the world comes from places. We'll talk about that later.
Right, there's always like a material component. Like it could be anything from dirt or blood or all these little things that you got to watch out for. Because obviously it's consuming it for a reason.
And so you want to be very careful. It's almost I feel like more terrifying than the demon magic, because where demon magic is very upfront. It's honest about its brutality.
I'm mad.
Yeah, it's honest about it, where Fae magic is very deceptive. And like you said, since it doesn't necessarily nullify or create magic effects, it creates this confusion when it just changes things slightly. So you never know if it's you who cast the magic wrong or if something else came in and changed it for you.
Yeah, and then also just kind of as it kind of has now merged into Extrayus itself over the kind of creation period of our world, we've seen that it does have these kind of strange properties on life forms.
It's it has started to affect the flora and fauna of the world.
Yeah, everything from and the thing with it is that it always just modifies something in existence. existence. You know, it takes a plant and turns it into its like Jumanji counterpart.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's perfect, actually.
Craziness, right? Like, and so that whole kind of changes, but it wasn't like that plant originated from. And so the other premise too is that, you know, that energy can be removed and the entity returned to its state.
Hopefully, if it's not too far gone.
It's not too far gone,
like
right?
anything.
But because it's just this modification, it's not like it was made from scratch. And then the other unique property that I've created with, you know, Fey magic is kind of the kind of fun nature of giving creatures or like entities or people powers that are kind of funny that you don't think they would have.
Yeah, and that have effects that you didn't think were dangerous, but then turn out
to be dangerous, or, you know, where, you know, either like a creature is much larger or much smaller. You know, imagine, you know, a giant that's been shrunk.
Oh my.
So here you're thinking, oh, it's this tiny little pixie-like sprite. Yeah, but it's got a strength of 26. It can hit you like a freaking freight truck.
Oh my gosh, and you can't see it coming.
Well, you're just not expecting it to be so tiny.
Yeah.
You know, things like that just play kind of these jokes, these tricks, to where, you know, you might be swinging at illusions without realizing it.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, in the case that we had in our we'll hear later in the Traveler's Chronicles, you know, mushrooms that are like essentially stalking you and just waiting for an opportunity to get you, to where, but they're still just plants. They're not anything special.
There's nothing creepier than being looked at by a mushroom with no eyes. How do you explain
and
that?
You know that
they're watching you.
You don't know how.
Yeah.
But you know that they're watching you.
Yeah, but they have no eyes. Where is it watching from?
So, you know, it really creates this kind of way where it becomes like in our world, in our campaign, it's this story of just, okay, all right, it's a wolf. Okay, does he have any weird thing? Any extra appendages? Okay, does he summon any crazy? So in our game, it's not a world where it's like, okay, once you get to level 5, wolves, goblins, they
don't matter.
Now it's, you don't know. That goblin could be slinging a fireball for all you know, and then can also, you know, summon a pack of wolves out of nowhere. So
or that wolf could be king of the forest and have all sorts of crazy abilities.
You know, or they talk, and that, you know, that could lead to some interesting situations when normally mindless creatures are telling you to not kill them, you know, or to play tricks on you.
Yeah, so that might be interesting.
The one thing I do find that I think is a running constant is that with Fey magic, there seems to always be the association with dancing
and music. So that's already come into play a little bit. We'll find out more on the Traveler Chronicles, but you know, Fey magic is really we've just started to see how much it actually affects the world and can cause some problems.
And like you were saying, like this is one of 2 of the external magic systems that are kind of barge their way into our world in order to kind of get at this kind of rich resource that is a brand new universe.
It's a completely untapped source for the Fae entertainment and for the demons resources. You know, so
and then by doing that, it caused the other 2 to be created as a kind of counterbalance. So it really kind of is cool because like a lot of our building isn't just necessarily like, bam, all right, everything was made, everything was set in stone at creation, let's roll with it. No, our world is this ever growing, ever changing, evolving world that, you know, we're talking about a story that's only 250 years ago, which means this magic has only really occupied our world for close to 300 years.
It's very new.
And so for that to be the magic to be really new, that's kind of crazy.
True. That can be a little intimidating sometimes. And you know, the people of Extrayus don't know too much about it yet because obviously it's sort of enshrouded in the lack of knowledge, but it can alter, and people will find this out, it can alter the way your magic flows in such unpredictable ways. It can affect the spells you cast, and that's what I'm worried about in the campaign is we'll be walking through some random place and we'll hit some sort of, I don't know, pocket of Fey magic or meet somebody, I don't know really, and you know, and all sorts of craziness breaks loose.
Yeah, because really what it is, and the way I look at it is, it's kind of these like areas, you know, you have all these like forests and stuff, so it's like, okay, I'm gonna walk the forest for a couple of days. It's like, it's forest, it's more forest. Hey, more forest. Hey, what'd you find? More forest. So this is kind of an interesting way that you can have these like pockets of essences, right? So it's like, oh, well, this is in the middle of this forest, the very dense part. There's actually this crack in the universe that's allowing a little bit of fey magic. So now you walk, and now the same trees are now, coming uprooted and now walloping on you, and that creates a much, I think, more unique world that really encourages travel and adventure, which is really the premise of our campaign. So when we built these magics, we wanted to make sure that not only were they an essence of the world, and not only did they have an effect, but it was also an effect that you wanted to go explore.
Yeah, you want to find out more about the world.
If it is so terrifying, you're like, never, we'll never explore it. We'll never actually get, so you always have to balance it is this dangerous tool, but you really want to try it at least once.
Just once. Well, that's why there's 6 of us traveling together.
I mean, you've had a few personal experience, interactions with Fae already, and so have some of the other travelers, which we'll get to interesting stories.
Yeah, well, for Luna's backstory, I found out not too long ago that she ended up losing her abilities fairly early on in her visits to the Mirren continent, and so that posed some issues for her that I don't quite fully know about yet either, because I just kind of got the beginning.
Gotta love when your character has no memory of their past.
It's fun. I'll find out as we go. But knowing that Fey magic can affect our natural magics in that way, and not just myself, but other people, it could steal other abilities. You never know. That's such an unpredictable thing to have on, like, floating in the back of your head.
Yeah, and I think that really comes into an aspect in the way that I kind of spun it a little bit as the DM, and like as you're giving me this information, I really kind of also wanted to give it that extra oomph. And so a lot of times, and you guys ran into this, like I think in the early part where it was like, oh, well, I can break this. It's like, no, you can't.
No, you can't.
It's like, oh, I'll just cast the spell magic. No, you won't. Like, you can, but it won't break it.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of that first experience of that. Fey magic a lot of times is permanent.
Yeah.
So, like, if you are cast something on you, it's downright permanent, and that kind of creates that extra little level of kind of intensity,
because it's an external magic. The normal laws of Extrayus don't apply to it, which means things like removing curse or anything like that might not necessarily fix an issue,
right? And that really just because when it comes to the way that they balance the magic, it actually, and we'll get into more of this when we do our deep dive onto Fae specifically,
the Fae people,
which I cannot wait for. You've been secretly hiding a lot of this information from me.
I've been creating a lot.
But it is this kind of system where it is based on these kind of hierarchies and these kind of masters of the Fae at the top.
There's a high court that controls everything.
And it's really only they who can will when their magic's done.
Oh, yeah.
And so that, I think, is going to be really interesting once the party really gets to, affected by some of these more permanent Fey effects, realizing that the only way to remove them is to go find this progenitor,
the main boss
of this ability or spell.
And that's going to be so tough, because if you think, little pockets, little bits of the Fae affecting Extrayus are difficult and scary, imagine having to go to the Fae plane where... or the Faescape, where they're
that was our campaign 1 finishing battle, final end all of a 2-year campaign,
and that was us going into a sort of a nerfed Feywild where it was kind of fighting for its own existence at that point.
Yeah, but really, also we've looked at like kind of the impacts, the mechanical, but really within the culture of the world, I think Fey magic has kind of the most unique, kind of sneaky, sly way that they've kind of created themselves within the world.
It's really become more of a legend, where at least people know about demons and demonic magic.
There's like a whole
people remember
of people that were.
There's a whole country, absolutely, that is solely focused on stopping the demon incursion.
Yeah.
But the Fey magic is so insidious, so whimsically detached, that it's just myth and legend at this point,
as well as successful. Usually if you're found, you don't get away. And I think that's kind of interesting too, because it created as we saw in the world, this kind of switch in the terms of that it's mostly viewed as like all these problems are demonic in nature, when in reality We've done in previous lore, as in previous lore drops with the elves, we learned that the Fae had a lot more to do with all the issues that occurred in the Reaping games.
They were dipping just more than a toe in.
Magic is literally the root of all of it because that's what the elves were accessing.
Yeah, and the demons just kind of saw the openings and were like,
second.
"Ooh, fun!"
They were second to the buffet line.
Yeah, they really were.
But they literally got all the blame.
It really was a bad rap.
So it'll be really interesting to see how, as the kind of world learns more and more, and especially when the history hopefully gets revealed, that how much of a cultural impact that we'll see in the world, and might see more kind of instances.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see as we go. Obviously, as one of the travelers themselves is a Fae creature, so it'll be interesting to see how they interact with people that might actually know something. Because right now, nobody knows what she is.
No, we're on the Mirren continent. Yeah. It's super simple. We're all having a semi good time. It's not great, but it's not terrible. So nobody's really been like, oh, Fae creature, kill it.
Yeah, nobody really understands besides two characters, and I think that makes it really interesting.
Yeah, and we've kind of spoken about it a little bit, but I think we're never really going to see what it really feels like until we get to the Hume continent and start interacting with more people.
Oh yeah. And then also, you can't really, the big thing too that's still a kind of lasting impression on the world are part of the chaos rifts.
Yeah.
And we spoke about this, about chaos magic, and that chaos magic is just essentially the creation of the conflicting energies of Fae and demonic.
Yeah, it's when they come together in high concentration in a specific area.
And so when that comes in, it's kind of interesting that within the culture and the society, it's still believed that these chaos risks are just from demonic influence.
Yeah, people still think
where the whole whimsical, chaotic, what is wild magic is literally coming from the Fae side of that. The empowerment and the making the spell more powerful is the demonic side, but the rolling a D100 and the craziness, that's the Fae. That's all Fae.
Yep. And as we know, the chaos rifts are created during the Reaping games, where everybody was fighting these two opposing forces without really knowing what they were fighting against.
Yeah, and as always, I mean, we're seeing everything, and with the purpose of Extrayus, everything's always evolving. That's why we really like these lore drops, because these are always just one part of a continuing story. We'll always be continuing. Probably the next lore drop will have so much more to develop in stories for Fae magic. But this is really just the beginning, and I really love that we're able to kind of start digging deeper and deeper and deeper into these.
I'm super excited, and if you have any sort of questions or ideas that you'd like to maybe have fleshed out and see what else is going on in Extrayus, let us know. That way we can cover it in an upcoming episode, and we can try and answer your questions.
Oh, yeah.
But really, we came together today to discuss Fae magic and Extrayus.
A little deeper into the magic series. We got a long way to go. I don't even think we're halfway through with the magic series.
And I think maybe now might be halfway through, maybe.
Next we get to do my favorite one. Yay. I'm excited for my next one.
That'll be super fun. So keep tuned in for the demon magic lore drop. That's going to be amazing. And I can't wait to see what we come up with.
Oh, yeah. And I hope everyone likes our new intro. Please stick around for our outro and hopefully listen to that a little bit. And as always, please be sure to like, review, subscribe. Let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what we're doing wrong. And we'll always love to hear anything you have for us.
Yep. Talk to you guys next time.
Have a good one. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Lore Drop. We hope you enjoyed exploring the rich lore and magic of Extrayus with us.
But the adventure doesn't have to end here. Join our Couple of Nerds Discord community to dive deeper into the world of Extrayus, share your own stories, and connect with fellow adventurers.
And don't forget to check out the Couple of Nerds YouTube channel. There you'll find all our content, from thrilling campaign highlights to miniature painting tutorials and more.
We love hearing from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts, questions, and ideas. Who knows, your input might just inspire our next episode.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through Extrayus. Until next time, keep your imagination alive and your dice ready.
Stay curious, stay creative, and may your adventures be ever wondrous.
See you in the next Lore Drop.